7 years ago, the woman I was ready to spend my life with walked away from me and straight into the arms of my wealthy brother. Fast forward to today at our father's funeral. He showed up with her on his arm, glowing with confidence, soaking in every stare. She stepped closer, close enough for her luxury perfume to linger, and murmured, "Looks like I won after all." "Still struggling, huh?" I didn't flinch. I met her eyes and replied evenly, "Maybe, but let me introduce you to my wife." She went completely still, because standing beside me was someone she never imagined seeing, someone who instantly unraveled everything she believed about success and failure. My name is David Thornton. I'm 35 years old, and for the last 7 years, I've been piecing my life back together after it was shattered by the two people I trusted the most. What you're about to hear isn't just another betrayal story. It's about realizing that sometimes the most painful loss turns out to be the greatest turning point of your life. But before I explain what happened at that funeral, before I tell you about the woman next to me who made my ex-fiancée's face lose all color, I need to take you back to when I was 28, back when I was a high school history teacher in Portland, Oregon, earning $42,000 a year and convinced I had my future completely mapped out. If this story has you hooked so far, hit subscribe, drop a comment. About a moment when karma finally caught up with someone who wronged you, and tap that like button because things are about to get serious. Her name was Jessica Hartley. She was 26 when we met, working as a dental hygienist at the clinic where I went for my yearly checkups. Auburn hair that caught the light perfectly, green eyes that felt like they saw straight through you, and a smile that erased stress without trying. I finally asked her out after my 3rd visit that year. Funny thing is, I'd never needed that many dental appointments before. I just kept finding excuses to come back. What we had felt easy, familiar, and safe. That's exactly how I'd describe it. Comfortable. Our nights were simple. Dinner at familiar chain restaurants, Netflix marathons on Fridays, and long conversations about buying a house someday. Once we'd saved enough for a down payment, Jessica was drawn to stability. She'd grown up watching her family struggle financially, her father jumping from one job to another, and she told me early on by our 4th date that she never wanted that kind of uncertainty again. I proposed after 2 years, during a camping trip to Crater Lake. No grand setup, no audience, just the two of us, a crackling campfire, and a ring I'd spent 6 months saving for. It cost $2,800, which felt enormous on a teacher's paycheck. When she said yes, she cried. And in that moment, I truly believed I was the luckiest man alive. My brother Cameron was 32 back then, 4 years older, and practically my opposite in every way. Where I chose meaning and service over money, Cameron chased wealth without hesitation. Right after college, he launched a tech consulting firm, caught the wave of companies scrambling to upgrade their systems, and by the time he turned 30, he was earning 7 figures a year. He lived in a downtown Portland penthouse with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. He drove a black Mercedes S-Class and wore suits that cost more than my monthly rent. But no matter how much he achieved, it was never enough. Every win was just preparation for a bigger one. Success to Cameron only mattered if it outdid the last. We were raised under the same roof by the same parents. Yet somewhere along the way, Cameron decided that life was a competition, and that winning was all that mattered. And for him, winning meant having more than everyone else, especially more than me. Our father, Richard Thornton, had always pushed me harder than Cameron. He was a self-made businessman who built a chain of hardware stores from nothing, and he never understood why I chose teaching instead of following his path. "You're wasting your potential," he'd say during holiday dinners. "Cameron understands how the world works. Money is how you keep score." Cameron would sit there with that familiar smirk, soaking up our dad's approval. I'd nurse my beer in silence, reminding myself that I'd chosen purpose over profit, that I was making a real difference in students' lives, that money wasn't everything. Still, late at night, doubt would creep in. I'd wonder if my father was right, if I'd chosen wrong. The engagement dinner was where the cracks really began to form, though I didn't recognize them at the time. Jessica and I had been engaged for 3 months, and we planned a small family dinner to celebrate. Just parents, siblings, nothing extravagant, nothing over the top. We picked a cozy Italian spot in the Pearl District, the kind with red checkered tablecloths, soft candlelight, and rows of wine bottles lining the walls. Cameron arrived 20 minutes late, making his entrance like the room had been waiting for him, and immediately took control of the conversation. He launched into a story about his latest business move, some high-profile merger that was apparently going to earn him a massive payout. Without checking with anyone, he ordered the priciest bottle of wine on the menu. Then he turned his focus to Jessica, asking about her job, her family, her plans for the future. At the time, I thought nothing of it. I assumed he was just being polite, trying to bond with his future sister-in-law. Jessica seemed flattered by the attention, laughing at his jokes, asking questions about his work. I remember feeling oddly proud that the two most important people in my life were getting along so well. When I stepped away to use the restroom, my mother, Patricia, gently pulled me aside. "David, sweetheart," she said carefully, "maybe keep an eye on how much Cameron's interacting with Jessica. You know how your brother can be." I brushed it off. "Mom, he's just being friendly. It's nothing." But mothers have a way of noticing things the rest of us miss. Over the following months, small details started adding up. Jessica brought Cameron up in conversations more often than felt natural. "Cameron says we should try this new restaurant. Cameron thinks the housing market is about to crash. Maybe we should wait. Cameron says I'm too smart to stay a hygienist forever and should look into management." I convinced myself it was harmless. Cameron was successful, confident, someone whose opinion carried weight. Of course Jessica would listen to him. Then came the messages. I was never the type to snoop. I trusted her completely, but one night she left her phone on the coffee table while she went to shower, and a notification lit up the screen. A message from Cameron. "Can't wait to see you again. Last night was amazing." My stomach dropped. I told myself I was misunderstanding it. There had to be a reasonable explanation. Maybe they'd bumped into each other. Maybe it was about a surprise for me. I opened the message thread and everything collapsed. There were months of texts, flirting, secret plans, explicit messages I won't repeat. They'd been seeing each other for at least 4 months. Meeting at his penthouse while I was at school grading papers and planning lessons. Completely unaware that my fiancée was betraying me with my own brother. What hurt even more was that it wasn't just physical. They were talking about a future together. Cameron telling her she deserved more than a broke teacher who'd never become anything. Jessica admitting she'd made a mistake, accepting my proposal that she'd settled for safety instead of chasing success. One message from Cameron burned itself into my memory. "David's always been the family disappointment. Dad knows it, I know it, and deep down you know it too. You deserve more. Someone who can give you the life you want, not someone who'll keep you stuck at this level forever." When Jessica stepped out of the shower, wrapped in my towel and smiling like everything was normal, I was sitting on the couch with her phone in my hand. "David, what are you—" she began. "How long?" I asked, surprised by how calm my voice sounded. "I don't know what you—" "Don't lie, not now. How long have you been sleeping with my brother?" She stood there silently, water dripping from her hair onto the carpet. Then her expression shifted. The guilt vanished, replaced by something colder, maybe defiance, maybe relief that the truth was finally out. 5 months, she said. "Since your dad's birthday party." That night flashed through my mind. I'd been the designated driver, looking after our father after he'd had too much to drink, making sure everyone got home safely. While I was being the responsible son, Cameron had made his move. "Why?" I asked, even though I already knew. Jessica sat down across from me, no longer pretending. "Because Cameron can give me the life I want," she said. "I'm exhausted, David, exhausted from budgeting every dollar, from choosing between new clothes and saving for a house, from planning a wedding we can't afford." She didn't stop. "He takes me to places where the bill costs more than your weekly paycheck. He bought me a bracelet last month that's worth more than your car. I thought you loved me," I said. "I did," she replied, and for a brief second, something like sadness crossed her face. "In a way, I still do. You're kind, you're steady, you're safe." She paused. "But safe isn't enough anymore. I want more, and Cameron can give me that." Then she said it flat, unflinching. "He's your brother, and he's a better man than you'll ever be." The words landed without emotion. "I'm sorry if that hurts, but it's the truth. You chose to be a teacher and barely scrape by. Cameron built an empire. You chose mediocrity. He chose success. And I'm choosing him. She walked into my bedroom, got dressed, and packed the few things she kept at my place. The engagement ring, the one I'd spent 6 months saving for, sat on the coffee table where she left it. She didn't look back when she walked out the door. I stayed there staring at that ring, realizing I'd lost everything in less than 20 minutes. My fiancé, my brother, my sense of family, my faith in people I trusted most. The next day I called Cameron. He answered on the third ring, his voice filled with that smug satisfaction that would haunt me for years. "I figured you'd call," he said. "How could you do this?" I asked. "How could I not?" Cameron replied. "Jessica's an incredible woman. David, smart, beautiful, driven," Cameron said. "She deserves someone who can keep up with that drive, not someone satisfied being a glorified babysitter earning pennies. She was engaged to you and now she's with me. That's life, little brother. The strong take what they want. The weak sit around whining about what's fair. We're family," I said. He laughed. Actually laughed. "Family is just a coincidence of birth," Cameron replied. "It doesn't mean a thing. Jessica chose me because I'm the better choice. Maybe this will teach you that decisions come with consequences." I wanted to drive straight to his penthouse and punch him in the face. Instead, I hung up the phone and sat there, feeling completely emptied out, like someone had scooped everything out of me. 2 weeks later, things somehow got worse. Cameron and Jessica went public on social media. Photos of them at upscale restaurants, charity galas, and a weekend getaway in Napa Valley. Jessica dressed in designer clothes and wearing jewelry I could never have afforded. Every post felt like another blade twisting in my chest. My mother called me in tears. "David, I'm so sorry," she said. I should have spoken up sooner. I saw the way Cameron looked at her. I just hoped. I hoped he wouldn't actually cross that line. My father called too, but his tone was different. "You need to move forward," he said. Jessica made her decision. Cameron made his. Fighting it won't change anything. Accept it and focus on your own life. No apology, no acknowledgement that what Cameron did was wrong, just disappointment that I wasn't handling it better. That's when it hit me. I was completely on my own. The next 6 months were the darkest period of my life. I lost 15 pounds because I couldn't eat. Sleep came in short, restless stretches. I showed up to work exhausted, just going through the motions, teaching while feeling hollow inside. My students noticed. One afternoon, a kid named Tyler, quiet, always sitting in the back, stayed after class. "Mr. Thornton, are you okay? You seem really sad." I tried to brush it off, but he wouldn't let it go. "My mom says when you're going through something hard, you have to keep going anyway, even when you don't want to. She says that's what being brave looks like." Tyler's mother was a single parent working 2 jobs. I'd met her at parent-teacher conferences, seen the exhaustion and determination in her eyes, and there her son was, trying to encourage his teacher who was barely holding himself together. That moment stayed with me. Tyler's mom didn't have the option to fall apart. She just kept moving forward. Maybe I needed to do the same. I started seeing a therapist, Dr. Helen Morrison. She wasn't cheap, and the cost stretched my already tight budget, but she was worth, and Dr. Morrison helped me realize that what Cameron and Jessica did had nothing to do with my value and everything to do with who they were as people. "You chose your career based on values," she told me during one of our sessions. "They chose each other for money and status. Ask yourself, who do you think will actually be fulfilled in the long run?" "They look pretty happy in every picture," I said, bitterness creeping into my voice. "Social media is a highlight reel, David," she replied. "No one shares the arguments, the doubts, or the moments when they realize their relationship was built on betrayal. Give it time." I started running, not because I enjoyed it, but because I needed an outlet for the anger burning inside me. 5 miles a day turned into 7, then 10. The physical exhaustion was easier to manage than the emotional pain. And slowly, very slowly, I began to feel like myself again. But I also made a choice. I was done being seen as the family failure, done being the one people underestimated. I was going to build something of my own. I wanted to prove my father and Cameron wrong. I just didn't know how yet. The answer came from somewhere I never expected. A fellow teacher, Greg Patterson, who taught computer science, mentioned over lunch that he was working on an educational app on the side. His idea was to help students learn history through interactive timelines and game-style challenges. The problem, Greg said, is I can code the platform, but I don't know the curriculum well enough to make it meaningful. Every time I write content, it reads like a Wikipedia page. Want some help? I asked. That one casual conversation turned into a partnership. Greg and I spent nights and weekends building what became History, Quest, an app designed to make history engaging for students raised on smartphones and short attention spans. We invested everything we had, time, savings, and years of classroom experience. 6 months after launch, we hit 10,000 downloads. A year later, we crossed 100,000 school. Districts began reaching out to license across their systems. Educational publishers started calling with acquisition offers. 2 years after that lunch conversation, Greg and I sold History, Quest to one of the largest educational publishers in the country for $8 million. After taxes, legal fees, and splitting the deal with Greg, I walked away with $3.2 million. I was 31 years old and suddenly wealthier than I'd ever imagined. But here's what Cameron and Jessica never understood. The money didn't change who I was. I kept teaching for another year because I genuinely loved it. I bought a modest home, not a penthouse. I drove a dependable car, not a status symbol. And I used a large portion of that money to create a scholarship fund for students from low-income families who wanted to become. I didn't broadcast my success. No social media announcements, no subtle flexes, no smug message sent Cameron's way. I chose to live quietly with intention, focusing on rebuilding a life that had nearly been destroyed by betrayal. Part of moving forward meant dating again, but I approached it with extreme caution. Almost too much. With every woman I met, I questioned her motives. Was she interested in me or in what I might be able to offer? That constant doubt made real connection difficult. I was always waiting for the other shoe to drop. Then I met Sarah Chen at a teachers' conference in Seattle. She was a special education teacher from Sacramento, deeply committed to inclusive education, sharp-witted and unexpectedly funny in a dry, understated way. We talked for 3 straight hours over bad conference coffee, and I never once mentioned money. Sarah was everything Jessica wasn't in the ways that truly mattered. Where Jessica had chased image and status, Sarah cared about meaning and impact. She drove a 10-year-old Honda Civic and felt no need to justify it. She wore jeans and sensible shoes instead of designer labels, and when she spoke about her students, her entire face lit up with genuine warmth. We dated long distance for 8 months before I asked her to move to Portland. Before taking that step, I told her everything. About Jessica and Cameron, about the betrayal, and about the money I'd made from selling History, Quest. I needed to know whether that knowledge would change anything between us. Sarah listened carefully, then looked at me and said, "David, I don't care about your money. I care that you used it to help students become teachers. That tells me who you are. The rest is just numbers in an account." We got married a year later. It was a small ceremony, close friends and my mother. I didn't invite my father or Cameron. They were no longer part of my life, and I had made peace with that. For the next 3 years, Sarah and I built something real together. We traveled during summer breaks, hosted game nights with other teachers, and talked about maybe starting a family someday. I was happy, truly happy in a way I'd never experienced with Jessica. Then my father died. The call came from my mother on a Tuesday morning. "David, it's your father. He had a massive heart attack. He's gone." I felt something, but it wasn't grief. It felt more like closing a book I'd never really enjoyed reading. My father and I hadn't spoken in 6 years, not since I told him I wouldn't attend Cameron and Jessica's wedding. He'd called me ungrateful, said I was holding onto a grudge over something that had worked out for the best. "There's going to be a funeral," my mother said. "I know things have been complicated, but I need you there. Please, David, for me." I looked over at Sarah. She was watching me closely, concern written all over her face. "We'll be there," I told my mother. The funeral was held at St. Michael's Catholic Church, the same place my father had attended Mass every Sunday for 4 decades. I wore a dark suit and stood near the back with Sarah, quietly observing as people filled the pews. Business partners, employees from his hardware stores, neighbors, extended family, friends. Then Cameron and Jessica walked in. 7 years had passed since I'd last seen them in person. Cameron looked older now, gray creeping into his hair, lines etched around his eyes. He was wearing a suit that probably cost several $1,000s. but something about him felt smaller, like he was putting in extra effort to project success. Jessica was clinging to his arm, dressed in an unmistakably expensive black dress. She'd aged well still. Striking, but there was a hardness to her face that hadn't been there when she was 26. They noticed me standing there with Sarah. Cameron's expression shifted into something carefully neutral. Jessica's eyes widened just a fraction, then narrowed as she took Sarah in, clearly registering what her presence meant. After the service, everyone gathered in the church hall for coffee and quiet conversation. I stood with Sarah, listening to one of my father's old business partners share stories, when Cameron approached. "David," he said, extending his hand like we were strangers closing a deal. "Thanks for coming." I stared at his hand for a moment before shaking it briefly. "Mom asked me to." "Right." His smile was tight. "This is awkward." "Is it?" I asked. "I hadn't noticed." Jessica stepped up beside him. I caught the way her eyes scanned Sarah, sharp, evaluating, like a jeweler inspecting a rival's piece. "David," she said sweetly, "it's been such a long time." "Not long enough," I replied evenly. She laughed as if I'd cracked a joke. "Still holding on to bitterness after all these years?" Sarah's hand slid into mine, giving a gentle squeeze, a quiet reminder to stay grounded. "I'm not bitter," I said. "I'm thankful." Jessica blinked. "Thankful? You did me a favor," I continued calmly. "You showed me who you really were before I made the mistake of marrying you. That kind of clarity is priceless." Her smile faltered. Cameron shifted forward, slipping into a defensive stance. "Come on, David, this is our father's funeral. Can't we just keep things respectful?" "I am," I said. "Respectful would have been pretending you don't exist. What you did wasn't a lapse in judgment, Cameron. It was deliberate. But I've moved on." "Clearly," Jessica said, her tone laced with sarcasm as she glanced at Sarah. "Though I have to admit, I expected you to end up with someone more impressive." That's when Sarah spoke. Her voice was calm but solid. "Impressive how?" she asked. "Morally? Professionally? Because I'm pretty sure I surpass you on both fronts." Jessica's face flushed. "Excuse me?" "You heard me," Sarah continued. "I don't know you, and honestly, I don't want to. But I do know what you did to my husband 7 years ago. And I know that people who build their lives on betrayal eventually learn what it really costs. Relationships built on betrayal rarely end well," Sarah finished calmly. "Oh, we're very happy," Jessica shot back too quickly. "Cameron's business is thriving. We have everything we want. Everything except integrity," Sarah replied evenly. Cameron's jaw tightened. "You don't know anything about us." "I know enough," Sarah said. "I know you're the kind of man who steals from his own brother. That alone tells me everything I need to know about your character." That's when Jessica leaned in close enough for her expensive perfume to hit me, and whispered, "So I guess I won, right? You're still just a teacher, living the small life you could never give me." I looked at her, really looked at her, and noticed something I'd missed 7 years ago: desperation. She needed me to believe she'd won, because somewhere deep down, she wasn't convinced herself. "Yeah," I said calmly. "Well, meet my wife." Jessica froze. Her eyes flicked between Sarah and me, confusion wiping away the smugness. "This is my wife, Sarah," I continued. "She loves me for who I am, not for what I can buy her. She chose me when she thought I was just a teacher earning a teacher's salary. And she didn't care when I told her about the money. Because money was never the point." Cameron's expression went carefully blank. "What money?" "The money from selling my educational software company 3 years ago," I said. "The one I built from nothing while you were busy betraying me. The one that sold for $8 million. The color drained from Jessica's face. "You're lying." "Am I?" said. "Ask Greg Patterson. Or check the business news from 3 years ago. History Quest sold to Pearson Education. It made headlines in the education world." Cameron stared at me like he was seeing a stranger. "You sold a company for $8 million and never told anyone?" "I told the people who mattered," I said, tightening my grip on Sarah's hand. "The people actually in my life. You stopped being one of them the day you betrayed me." Jessica looked like she'd been slapped. "But you're still teaching. You still drive a Honda." "Because those are my choices," I replied. "I teach because I love it. I drive a dependable car because I don't need to prove anything, and I'm happier than I've ever been. You're lying, Jessica said again, but her voice trembled now. This is just some sad attempt to feel better. Sarah calmly took out her phone, typed for a moment, and turned the screen toward her. David Thornton and Greg Patterson, Portland educators, sell History Quest to Pearson for an undisclosed sum. The article estimated the deal at $8 to $10 million. Jessica's hand shook as she gave the phone back. She turned slowly toward Cameron, and I watched years of quiet doubt harden into a devastating realization. How's business these days? I asked Cameron casually. Still pulling in 7 figures, or has the market gotten tougher? Cameron's silence said it all. That's what I thought. You see, I continued, the thing about consulting is that your value is only as good as your last contract. The tech sector's been brutal the past few years, hasn't it? We're doing fine, Cameron said, though the conviction in his voice was missing. Are you, though? I pressed. Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you've been working harder for a lot less. Funny how that works, he muttered. Jessica was studying him now. That familiar calculating expression I knew so well. The quiet reassessment. The doubt creeping in. The question of whether she'd made the right choice. The difference between you and me, Cameron, I said, is that I built something that matters. Something that helps kids learn. Something that will outlast both of us. What have you built besides a reputation for betraying your own family? This is ridiculous, David, Cameron said, though he was already stepping back. Jessica, let's go. But Jessica didn't move. She was staring at Sarah, taking in her simple dress, her lack of flashy jewelry, her obvious calm contentment. You really don't care about money? Jessica asked Sarah. Not even a little, Sarah replied. I care that David used a portion of his earnings to create a scholarship fund for future teachers. I care that he still goes to work every day because he loves what he does. I care that he's kind, honest, and doesn't measure his worth by a bank balance. The money's just a bonus. Jessica glanced at me one last time, and I saw something crack behind her eyes. 7 years of convincing herself she'd made the right choice, that she'd won, that leaving me for Cameron was clever. All of it fell apart in a single moment. I hope you're happy, she said quietly. For the first time, it didn't sound like an insult. It sounded like a plea. I am, I said honestly. I really am. Cameron grabbed her arm and practically dragged her toward the exit. As they left, I caught her voice sharp with accusation and his defensive reply. The image of the perfect couple was cracking, and I wasn't even sorry to witness it. My mother appeared at my side, having watched everything unfold. That was intense, she said softly. 7 years in the making. Your father would have been proud, I said. Not of Cameron, she replied, of you. He was wrong about you, David. I think he realized it at the end, but he was too stubborn to admit it. I looked around the church hall at people saying goodbye to my father and realized I had already said my goodbye years ago, back when he chose Cameron's success over my dignity, when he made it clear that money mattered more than character. You ready to go home? Sarah asked, slipping her hand into mine. Yes, I said, smiling. I'm ready. More than ready. As Sarah and I walked to our car, I thought about everything that had happened. 7 years ago, losing Jessica had felt like the end of my world. Now I realized it had been the start of something far better. Cameron had taken Jessica thinking he'd won, but all he really did was save me from a marriage that would have slowly poisoned both of us. Jessica wanted someone who could buy her things. Cameron wanted a trophy to prove his superiority. They got exactly what they deserved. I had found someone who truly saw me and loved what she saw. Someone who chose me when I was just a teacher and didn't change when she learned I had money. Someone who valued the same things I did, who made me laugh and inspired me to be a better person. That isn't winning or losing. It's finding the right person at last. 6 months after the funeral, my mother called. David, I thought you should know. Cameron and Jessica are getting divorced. I meant it when I said, I'm sorry to hear that. Not because I wanted them to stay together, but because divorce is always painful. Jessica left him, Mom continued. Apparently, she's been seeing one of Cameron's business partners, a wealthier man. Cameron's devastated. I paused. Jessica doing to Cameron what she had done to me. The symmetry was almost poetic. How's Cameron taking it? I asked. Not well, Mom said. He called me last night crying. Doesn't understand how she could do this after everything he gave her. I laughed quietly. I tried to point out the irony, but he wasn't ready to hear it. He's asking if you'd talk to him. Tell him, I said. I hope he finds someone who loves him for who he is, not for what he can provide. That's the only advice I'm willing to give. Mom was quiet for a moment. You've really moved on, haven't you? I have, I said, looking over at Sarah grading papers at our kitchen table, fully absorbed in her work. Turns out the best revenge is simply living well. That was 2 years ago. Now Sarah and I have a daughter, Emma, 14 months old, already showing her mother's determination, and apparently my stubbornness. We're still teaching, still living in our modest home, still driving reliable cars. I see my mother regularly. She's an involved grandmother who finally understands that success isn't measured in dollars. I haven't spoken to Cameron since the funeral. Last I heard, he's consulting for someone else's firm, trying to rebuild a reputation. Jessica? She's on her third marriage, still chasing wealth, still convinced the next rich man will finally make her happy. Meanwhile, the scholarship fund I set up has sent 12 students to college to become teachers. 3 have already graduated and are now teaching in underserved communities. That helping others build a future matters far more to me than any amount of money or status could, than any balance in my bank account. Sometimes people ask me if I ever wonder what my life would have been like if Jessica hadn't left me for Cameron. The truth? I do think about it. I imagine being married to someone who saw me as a means to an end, rather than a partner. I think about missing Sarah, missing Emma, missing the chance to build something that truly matters. What Cameron and Jessica did was one of the cruelest betrayals imaginable. They shattered my trust, broke apart my family, and nearly broke me. But in a strange way, they also set me free to become the person I was meant to be. That day at the funeral, when Jessica asked if she'd won, she was asking the wrong question. This was never a contest. It was about 2 people making choices, about the life they wanted, the person they wanted to be. I chose integrity over image, purpose over profit, and real love over convenience. 7 years later, standing in that church hall with Sarah beside me, I watched Jessica realize she had made the wrong choice. That wasn't revenge. That was just karma showing up to collect what was owed. And the best part? I didn't have to lift a finger. I just lived my life, stayed honest, worked hard, and loved the people who deserved it. Everything else fell into place. So yes, Jessica, you could say you won. You got Cameron, his money, the lifestyle you wanted, temporarily. But I got Sarah, I got Emma, I got peace. I got the chance to build something meaningful. And I sleep at night knowing everything in my life is earned, chosen deliberately, and built on a foundation that won't collapse the moment someone wealthier comes along. You tell me who really won. If this story hit home, if you've ever been betrayed and wondered if happiness could ever return, drop a comment below, share your story, you're not alone, and don't forget to subscribe for more stories that prove life has a way of working itself out, even when it feels like everything is falling apart. Hit that like button, and I'll see you in the next one.